Okay, so good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening, and magandang oras, anumang oras kayo nanonood ngayon dito sa ating continuation ng lecture ng Theories of Crime Causation. For you to understand this subject matter, if you are a student or a teacher or you are just would like to know all about the different theories of crime causation, you need to watch also the previous videos or the video that I have already posted concerning lesson 1, and that was actually on the concept of the human mind, how it affects our behavior and personality. And of course, we also tried to understand in your first video lecture concerning what you call the normal behavior or the social norms as well as the ethics. Okay? Because you can never understand what is an abnormal behavior or criminal behavior without understanding uh, what are the normal behaviors. Today, we are going to discuss further on the further explanation of human behavior. And of course, at the end of this lesson or this lecture, we are going to start discussing about theory and the importance of. Again, to at the end of this lecture or this lesson number 2, it is expected that the learners should be able to explain the concept of human behavior and should be able to examine who they are, as well as they should be able to identify and discuss what are the different perspectives or ideas on what makes a human behavior using their own words. On the other hand, lesson 3, the objective of this lesson 3 is to let the student, okay, define what is theory, discuss what is theory, and to discuss the importance of theory. Now, again, just like in our lesson 1, this is a kind of answering, discussing the questionnaire or the multiple choice question. If you are my student in the classroom, at least you know this thing. But if not, then just try to take note of this questionnaire for you to understand better the premise. The first question, what is not true about human behavior? Okay, human behavior. Take note, human behavior. Well, first thing first, you need to understand that when you say human behavior, when you say behavior, it is actually tangible or visible or nakikita. Lahat ng nakikita na ginagawa ng isang tao ay tinatawag nating behavior. Therefore, okay, the answer here is a behavior or a human behavior does not describe a person's attitude, because attitude basically is invisible, or it is, shall we say, it is not readily seen, or it is not seen, but rather an attitude is manifested in the behavior of a person. I'm going to discuss that later on. Now, Natalie, according to Natalie Boyd, a human behavior speaks about your actions and conduct. So that's a human behavior. So actions and conduct, take note again, these are visible. Ito yung mga nakikita. The way you talk, the way you walk, okay? That is what you call your behavior. Another thing, to your paano ka mag-react sa mga nangyayari sa kapaligiran mo, or how you relate with your social and your physical environment. Just like, say, for example, uh, if you are victimized by a crime, or if you are victimized by, or if your place is what you call affected by a calamity, and there is what you call a deterioration of your physical environment, then how do you react to your physical environment? Ano ang naging ugali mo? Ano ang naging pagkatao? Or ano ang naging actions mo? How how you react, or how do you react on the deterioration of your physical environment will now become your human behavior, as well as how do you react with your social environment. Another thing, according to Natalie Boyd, human behavior could either be, or human behavior is both, meaning Natalie Boyd believed that human behavior, the way you talk, the way you walk, okay, the things that you do, your conduct in life could either be or are basically attributed from your genetical order, meaning what you inherited. Further, your behavior, okay? So there is what you call an issue whether behavior is nature or nurture. Nature, your behavior, the way you talk, is practically attributable to your parents or from your parents. Those who believe that a behavior is nurtured, meaning you are not born that way, but rather along the way, as you grow, then you learn to develop some habitual actions and habitual words or the way you talk and everything. But of course, more believe, just like me, I believe that a behavior of a person is basically attributed from his parents or from his genes and from his or her physical environment. So this is understanding of attitude and behavior. Okay. Attitude pertains to your manner, your disposition, your feeling, your position, okay, with regard to a person or thing, or the tendency or the orientation, especially of the mind. To simplify that thing, attitude means how do you see things and how you regard things. Ano ang tingin mo sa isang bagay at ano ang trato mo sa isang bagay. Say for example, in our subject, how do you regard your subject matter? Okay? Ang tingin mo ba sa subject mo ay hindi masyadong mahalaga? So, that is your attitude. Okay? You regard it as less significant or less important. Now, on the other hand, that attitude will now be manifested by your actions and by your word, the way you conduct yourself. That is now your behavior. Say, for example, if you are taking for granted your modules, you are taking for granted your subject matter, then your actions now will be, you will become lazy. You will not work on it, or you're not going to work diligently on your modules or your subject matter. That is your behavior, a manifestation of your attitude. If you consider your subject as a very important matter, then by all means, your actions will speak about your attitude. That's why there's a saying that action speaks louder than your words. Okay, so your action, basically, those are your behaviors. So behavior is something that is seen, as I've mentioned a while back. It's a manner of conducting yourself. Anything that an organism or a person does involving action and response to stimulation. So again, stimulation or stimuli is anything that will make you react. Your response, okay, of an individual or your response as an individual or a group or an species to your environment is your behavior. Okay? So, yun ang pagkakaiba ng attitude at behavior. Number 2, Mrs. Rhea is a police officer. She is also a wife and a mother of 2. As a police officer, she needs to maintain a stern but calm personality in order to be respected. When you say stern, more or less you are firm, ikaw ay stricto, okay? Pero you are calm. On the other hand, when you are at home, your personality changes into a mother. you become now, as a mother, you become now very sweet towards your husband and caring. You are not strict to them. Okay? You are caring and loving towards your children. So among the following, which is not hermoi? Of course, before you can understand the answer, you should know what is moi. Okay? Moi basically pertains to who you are physically, who you are, okay, or your status in the society. In here, Rhea is a police officer. It answers the question who she is, the society, that is her status. A wife is also what you call her moi, meaning who she is in the family. She is the wife and a mother of two. So moi basically pertains to your biological, physical attributes or characteristics as well as your social status. Okay. Now, on the other hand, the letter D answers now your personality or your, we call it in layman's term, in Tagalog, you call that your ugali. Yung ugali mo bilang police and ugali mo bilang nanay. Okay? So, insofar as being a police officer, the persone or the personality of Rhea is she is stern but calm. On the other hand, as a mother, her persone is she is a loving and caring wife and husband. Okay? So letter D is not a moi, that is a persone.
Okay, so according to Marcel Mauss, there are two faces of every self. In other words, ikaw bilang isang tao, may nagre-representa sa'yo or may pagkakakilanlan sa'yo. The first thing that people can distinguish you or can identify you could be your moi. What is that moi? That is your person's sense of who he is. Just like, say for example, I am a teacher, you are a student, or you are the barangay or kabataang barangay chairman, okay, or the kabataang barangay secretary, or you are a father, or you are a friend to somebody else, or you are a son, or you are a father, okay. So that is the moi. That is the first thing that people could identify you, or your description, or perhaps your body. Say, for example, your biological givenness, just like your height, just like your health, just like your complexion, your hair, and like that. Okay, so your basic identity. On the other hand, on the deeper notes, you can also be identified based on your persone or based on the social concept of what it means to be who he is. In other words, you as a student, how do people describe you? Or how are you identified by other people? Okay, that is your persone. Are you a diligent student? Are you a lazy student? Are you a happy or a jolly student? Or are you a strict teacher? Are you a lenient teacher? Okay, so that could be your social concept, or that is the social concept about you. Yung pagkakakilanlan sa yung mga ginagawa or sa yung pag-uugali. In our layman's term, we call that persone as your pag-uugali. Just like a while back, Rhea was described on her moi as a police officer and as a mother of two and a wife to her husband. On the other hand, her persona was about how he deal with people in the community as a police officer, and of course, uh, at home, how he deal or how she deals with her family as a mother to her children and as a wife to her husband. So just say for example, as a person, dapat nagmamatch din yung persona mo doon sa, we call it basic identity mo. Say for example, I am a teacher, okay? So, I should be acting and I should be regarding you as my students. I should not be regarding you as my mere friends, okay? Or say for example, if you are my nephew, you are my relative, okay? At home, I will treat you or I will deal with you as my nephew or as my relative. But in the school, as a teacher, my persona will change. My persona towards you will change. I'm going to treat you as my student. That is the idea. Just like, again, making myself an example, I am a pastor of a born-again Christian church, okay? So in the classroom, I am known as a strict teacher. So if somebody's late, normally, I ask them to perform squat thrust. Now, in the church, I could not do that. I should be acting like a pastor. Pag mayroong na late, hindi ko pwedeng sabihin, oy sister, mag-push up ka dyan, mag-squat ka. Hindi po pwede. Kailangan, nagmamatch palagi yung moy mo, yung basic identity mo, doon sa persone mo. And the totality of that could explain your personality. Okay, it will now explain the totality of who you are. Okay, so that is the moy and persone, as we call it, explained by Marcel Mauss, meaning these things are important in the concept of human behavior because you should be behaving according to your basic identity. That is the idea. Okay? Okay, so number 3. Plato believe that human behavior flows from 3 main sources. Okay? So we are now in the perspective of or perspectives of human behavior, meaning what are the ideas or opinion concerning what makes a human behavior. Okay, so under the philosophical perspective, we have, of course, Socrates, we have Plato and Aristotle, and of course other philosophers of this age, okay, or ancient age. So for Plato, when he say human behavior, basically it comes out first from your desire, no? From your desire. When you say desire, something like today, why are you so very diligent in doing your work? Because you desire to finish your course, or you desire to help your parents after graduating from college, or you desire right now to become an academic scholar. So that's the idea. Another thing is, according to Plato, it could either be based on our emotion. Say for example, no, nanalo ka ng loto, nanalo ka ng wedding, pag nag-wedding ka, loto, no? Ngayon, dahil sa tuwa mo, dahil sa saya mo, ikaw ay nagbalato, ikaw ay nagbigay sa mga kapitbahay. So same thing, say for example, kapag ikaw ay naging successful sa isang bagay, and out of your very joyful emotion, eventually, you did we call it, you give charity to other people, o kaya nag-celebrate ka, o kaya ikaw ay tawag natin nagpakain. Another thing, according to Plato, na minsan kapag ikaw ay malungkot, bakit siya uminom ng alak? Kasi malungkot siya, something like that. So, according to Plato, ang ating human behavior could emanate from our desire, our intentions, our aspirations, or our emotion, and of course, according to our knowledge. Meaning, sasabi niya, kung ano yung alam mo, basically, because you know that this is right, then you are doing it because that is what you know, that as a right thing to do. So, knowledge, ano yung mga alam mong bagay? Dahil alam mong ganito yan, so you are doing it because you know that that is the thing that is needed to be done. Okay? So, reasoning is not from Plato's idea or from Plato's, we call it, philosophies. No? Ang reasoning, more or less, that is from Socrates. Okay? So these are the perspectives of human behavior. You have the philosophical, psychological, and sociological. Of course, we have more, but these are the 3 basic perspectives of human behavior. So from the philosophical point of view, the idea here is the word philosophy, that is love for wisdom. Okay? So in here, philosophers try now to rationalize things before doing it, or they try now to apply wisdom before doing it. When you say wisdom, that is, you know what should be done in a given time. The right thing to be done, okay, on a right situation, right condition, and right time and right place. That is wisdom. So, hindi ibig sabihin na marunong ka. Ang marunong kasi marami kang alam, pero ang wisdom ay tinatawag natin na may alam ka at alam mo kung paano mo gawin yung alam mo na yan. Okay? So, according to Socrates, people's behavior basically is a product of their rationalization. Meaning, iniisip ng tao yung kanyang ginagawa. Ito ba ang aking gawin? Ito ba ang aking gawin? So, before anything else, people basically think of the things that they are going to do or they're going to say, okay, before doing it or before saying it. Something like sa atin, pag mali yung ginawa mo, sabi nila, hindi ka naman nag-iisip bago mo ginawa. So something like that. No? So according to Socrates, no, nobody is willing to choose to do wrong. In other words, after rationalizing na ito yung maaring mali yung ginawa niya, maaring crime yung ginawa niya, but perhaps according to Socrates ay malamang ay kailangan niya ng pera at yun lamang ang only means para sila ay mabuhay. So after rationalizing, so napilitan lamang siya not to choose to do wrong. But actually, according to Socrates, people are rational. Meaning, tayo ay nag-iisip ng tama. So, according to him, kapag maling ginawa mo, that is not actually your choice to do it. Perhaps, no, may mga other reasons why you did that thing. Okay, so we are done with Plato. With regard to Aristotle naman, si Aristotle kasi para siyang si Sigmund Freud, na Aristotle basically considers the basic needs of people, just like the needs of your flesh, okay, the needs of your emotion, okay, and your mind and your heart. That's the idea of we call it Aristotle insofar as human behavior is concerned. We're going to discuss that later on. Okay, so further, in the philosophical point of view, there is a debatable or there is a debate or an argument with these things. Because accordingly, there are people or there are human beings who are not considered as persons at all. Okay, so they don't have that kind of personality. Why? Because they do not have that freedom or the free will to do something or to think rationality. Okay, or to give a reasonable action. Say for example, those people who are in persistent vegetative state. When you say vegetative state, just like the picture above, ito yung mga tao na more or less they are unconscious or under coma. Or maaring siya ay conscious but practically ay hindi siya aware on what is happening around him. So in that case, he is not logical enough to behave, okay, or to do what is right. And accordingly, the great apes, yung mga malalaking gorilla, no? You have that picture. Accordingly, the family of the apes or the gorilla or the monkeys, accordingly, they are beings, but they are not person, but they have certain behavior. Okay, so they behave in a way that it will identify them. Okay, so that is the idea. They have behavior, so they behave like humans, but they are not considered as humans. So they just say that their behavior. So we call it almost the same with how human beings behave. Another thing is that there are people who believe that there may be some intelligent beings from other planets. So, yung mga alien na tinatawag natin. But personally, I don't agree with them. I don't believe in them. But of course, for the purpose of your topic, accordingly, there may be some intelligent beings in other planets that manifest certain or conduct themselves or they have certain behavior, but they cannot be considered as human behavior because they are not humans. Okay, so that is the idea of this philosophical perspective of human behavior. Further, according to the philosophical perspective, there are people who cannot rationalize well or who cannot, okay, conduct themselves well or freely because they are, we call it something like incarcerated or imprisoned, just like say the people inside the jails and the prison. Okay, they behave, but actually their behavior is contrary to their normal behavior because of the restrictions. Same thing if you are training, or if you will be training later on, if you enter the Tri-Bureau or any of the uniformed services of the government, during the training, somehow your behavior will be, we call it, will be restricted because of the restrictions or because of the lack of freedom to do or to say something else. So that is one of, we call it the arguments on the philosophical point of view, that accordingly these people are not normal, they are behaving, we see them talk, we see them do something, we hear them talk, okay, like that, but actually that is not their normal behavior because somehow they are restrained by the organization or by the rules and regulations of the organization. Another perspective of human behavior, as we have mentioned a while back, is the psychological. From the word psychological, it is emanating from the processing of our mind. Okay, psychologists believe, or in the psychological perspective of human behavior, they believe that people are just like living machines. After receiving the information with our five senses or six senses, okay, after receiving something, after absorbing information, somehow we are just like machine that our mind will process it. It will process it, it will rationalize it, it will think, it will consider now weighing something before doing something. So it's almost the same with the philosophical point of view of Socrates on that here. It considers that whatever we do is a product of our human mind. That is the idea of the psychologist, that if you are normally a normal thinking person, then practically you will be doing normal things. But if you are, we call it abnormal thinking person, then expectedly you will be doing deviancy or abnormal things. That's the idea of the psychological perspective. And further, under the psychological perspective of human behavior, there is what you call the theory of behaviorism. No? The theory of behaviorism, it means that that our behavior is a product of our response to any stimulus or stimuli, or anything, stimulus or stimuli. These are the things that make us react. Say, for example, why are you trying now to do diligently your work? In fact, the last time around, you are not diligent, meaning you just take for granted your modules or submission of assignment, work assignment. But somehow today, you are now becoming more industrious, no, than before. Ayan, medyo masipag ka na. Bakit? Okay, kasi mababa yung grades mo. So, in reaction to that, you are now behaving that way. Okay? So, yun ang ibig sabihin yan. So, yung mababang grado mo, yun ang naging stimulus para yung ginagawa mo ngayon ay mas masipag ka sa pag-aaral mo. So, that's the idea of human behavior in response to stimulus under the behaviorism principle. No? So whether you are doing normal thing or abnormal thing or criminal thing, accordingly, it could be a product of a stimulus, a reward, a punishment, or anything else, okay? A product of your environment. So these are the classic example of behaviorism. Although we are going to discuss this thing later on in your criminal theories. By the way, criminological theories are more or less identical with all the theories governing the human behavior. Okay, so pare-parehas yan na sinasabi ng mga psychologists, sinasabi nila na kung ano yung ginagawa ng tao, nagagawa na mabuti, ganun din yung mga circumstances, bakit yung tao gumagawa ng masama. Okay, so the same. Okay, just like in your social differential association theory or the differential association theory of, we call it Edwin Sutherland, na sinasabi niya na kung ano yung kasama mo, siya yung ugali mo. So kapag masama yung kasama mo, magiging masama ka rin. In like manner, pag mabuti yung mga kasama mo, ay mabuti rin ang magiging ugali mo. So that is a parallel principle. So yun ang ibig kong sabihin dyan. Okay, sa operant conditioning, a subject learns behavior by associating it with a consequence. So ano yon? Okay, so say for example, yung mga train nila na mga K9, yan, na-train na mga yan. Ngayon, kaya sila na-train na mag-amoy ng droga or contrabands or whatever kasi merong consequence yung gagawin nila. Meron silang reward na favorite toy nila or favorite pagkain nila. Kaya nila ginagawa yon. So, nakukondition yung kanilang senses, yung kanilang instinct. So, sa classical conditioning naman, people learn to associate two unrelated stimuli with each other. Say, for example, kapag may dumaan, may narinig kang bumapatingting na bell, ang nasa isip mo ay merong nagbebenta ng ice cream kaya tatakbo ka palabas. So, something like that. Okay? So, pag may, say for example, yung pagtawag mo sa aso mo, gagamit ka ng bell, at tuwing narinig na yung bell ay merong pagkain na bibigay sa kanya. So, practically, ay tawag natin, mako-condition yung kanyang utak na lalapit siya sa iyo kasi mayroon siyang inaasahan na pagkain, ina-associate niya yun. Kahit yung mga manok ninyo, no, pag nilapitan nyo, ewan ko kung anong tawag, kung paano nyo tawagin ang mga manok ninyo, no? Ganun kayo. So, something like that. Marinig lang nila yon, kahit wala kang dalang pagkain, lalapit sila because na-condition yung utak nila na kapag may sounds na ganon, mayroong pagkain. So, they associate something with that. Of course, all of these things can also be applied sa ating behavior na pang-araw-araw. Okay? We are conditioned by a reward or by a punishment or anything else na nakukuha natin na mabuti or masama sa ating mga ginagawa. So, practically, sa criminal behavior, pag-uusapan din natin yan, yung mga theories na yan. Number 4, which of the following best describes philosophical perspectives of human behavior? So, philosophical perspective. Unang-una, strict discipline is an essential element in molding future law enforcers. Okay? So, ang ibig sabihin ng class, okay, yan yung ating sagot na philosophical statement yan. Na sinasabi niya na ito yung philosophy ko. Pag stricto ako, ay magiging magaling ang mga estudyante ko. So, something like me. In the classroom, kapag face-to-face tayo, yan yung aking philosophy or aking personal philosophy na kailangan stricto ako para gagaling yung aking mga estudyante, mag-aaral sila. So that is my, we call it my philosophy in life or in teaching. Now, on the other hand, letter B, the students are well-behaved whenever their college dean is in campus. Take note. Okay, what is their behavior? They are behaving well. Why? There is a reason. There is a stimuli. Kasi nandun yung dean ng kanilang campus or ng kanilang college. So, letter B is more on psychological. Most criminology students are well-mannered because of the disciplinary culture in their department. Okay? So, sinasabi niyan na karamihan sa mga estudyante or if not all of the criminology students, they are well-mannered kasi nandun na yung culture sa kanilang department na sila yung mga disiplinado. So, letter C is more of sociological. Na yung behavior mo is something like nurtured by the kind of environment that you have. Take note, psychology is something like in the operation of the mind. Letter D, in the classes of the dean, no one cheats because of harsh punishment of those who will be caught cheating. So, letter D is more of psychological. So, you are not, okay, you do not want to cheat because of the expected harsh punishment. Because of the expected harsh punishment. Okay, so sociological, on the other hand, this is now the, we call it the third perspective. In sociological, accordingly, our behavior is practically nurtured by the kind of society that we have. No? So, unang-una, sabi ng functionalism. Society is a system having parts which are connected and related with each other, in which that human behavior is being formed in the process of socialization. So, kagaya sa atin, ano ang aking function? I am your facilitator, I am your instructor, I am your teacher, and you are my learner, you are my students. Okay? So, you have your own function. And of course, the administration, they have their own function. Okay? Your parents, they have their own functions in everything in life. No? Everything in society, there are, we call it different functions that we do. And practically, our behavior is dependent now on the kind of socialization that we do. Okay? On the kind of, we call it going with other people in the society. So it also we call it be governed by the type of function that we do. Okay? So ano yung function natin, yun ang ating magiging behavior. And there is what you call the social psychology. That is a we call it social science philosophy that try now to understand and explain how the thoughts, feelings, and behavior of individuals are influenced by the actual, imagined, or implied presence of other human beings. Meaning, parang ganito yan, no? Mayroon tayong natawag na social phenomena. Okay? Na kung ano yung mga nandoon sa lugar na yan, okay, sa barangay ninyo, pag mga mababait ang mga tao sa barangay, ang tendency nun, naging mabait ka rin kasi puro mabait yung mga tao doon. Okay? Kapag mga bully, mga deviant yung mga tao doon, tendency nun, maging ganun ka rin. Ayan, okay? So that's social psychology. Hindi siya individual kasi. Iba yung individual psychology. Ito yung kasi yung pangkalahatan. Okay? Something like, ano yung mga mabuting nangyayari sa loob ng tri-bureau at ano yung mga di magandang nangyayari sa tri-bureau, accordingly, is a product of a social psychology. Yan. So, the thoughts, the feelings, and behavior of individuals are influenced by the actual, meaning yung actual, yung nandyan na, realistic na nangyari, or yung mga imagined things, okay, na may mga tao, kahit wala. Yan. So, something like me, I am lecturing as if mayroong mga tao sa harapan ko na nakikinig. Okay? So, yung aking, pag nakita mo ako nag-lecture ngayon, hindi lang ako nakaupo, kundi meron ako mga hand gesture. Okay? Yan. Because I'm imagining that there are people in front of me listening, or I am inside the classroom. Or implied presence of other human beings. So, that is the idea of social psychology. No? Yung pangkalahatan na natawag natin maging behavior mo because of the general condition of your society. Okay, so under this, we call it functionalism. The social order is not only what you call a function of one particular group of people. It could be the family has a contribution because they are the primary social unit that will nurture or will teach the children how to deal with the society. And you have the education. Education is something like siya yung nagbibigay ng credentials. Okay? Anong credentials mo? Pwedeng honor, pwedeng medal, pwedeng reward, and your transcript of record. So that is your merit given by your school. And the religion, on the other hand, is somehow has a function also in addressing the conscience or the morality of the people. And crime practically is has also a function in social regulation, meaning if there is no crime, okay, you do not know whether your laws and regulations are perfect or not. So somehow the existence of criminal activity, okay, will test the kind of policy, the kind of laws, the kind of government that we have. So that is the idea of the functionalism theory. All but one are philosophical explanations of human behavior. Okay, so philosophical. All but one, again, when you say all but one, meaning lahat ito maliban sa isa. So, hinahanap niya yung maliban, yung exception. Okay, all but one are philosophical explanations of human behavior. Okay, so maliban sa isa. Human behavior is about the condition for personhood. How you reacted to a certain stimulus is more of psychological. Your behavior is determined how you reasoned out, so that is philosophical. Nobody willingly chooses to do wrong, that is philosophical. And letter A, human behavior is about the condition for personhood. So that is also philosophical. So it is not considered. That is letter B, because letter B is more of psychological explanation of human behavior. Ayan. Okay, so which of the following is not a churi? Which of the following is not a churi? Yan. Poverty causes crimes. Crimes are related to low IQ level. Flexible learning results to lower learned knowledge. And you have police omnipresent. Okay. So, ganito yan. Para malaman mo yung sagot, puntahan mo yung definition ng churi. Ano nga ba ang definition ng churi? Ang definition ng churi is a statement that tries now to assume or gives an explanation as to the causes of something. So in here, number 1, there is a theory that poverty causes crime. Letter B, there is a theory that crimes can be caused by low IQ level. And letter C, there is a theory, okay, there is a possibility that flexible learning will result to lower learned knowledge. So A, B, and C, these are practically theories. Letter D is not a, it's not a theory because that's simply a concept or a principle depending on how you use that word. If you are referring to the police omnipresence, that thing only, that is a concept. Okay? But it might be a principle of police omnipresence. When you say police omnipresence as a technique of patrolling or crime prevention, then that could be a principle. So the police omnipresence or can be taken singly as a concept only. So something like kapag sinabi mong criminological causes of crime, or shall we say crime causation theories, meaning you are now referring to possible statements or assumptions bakit merong criminal activity. Yun ang ibig sabihin yan. So, yun ang mga possible assumptions noon. Okay. Ayan. So, that is A, B, and C. Those are theory. So, what is a theory? Again, as I've said a while back, according to Freda Adler, a theory is any statement explaining the relationship between abstract concepts in a meaningful way. Yan, abstract concepts. Just like a while back, poverty, that is abstract. Okay? Like low IQ level, that is abstracting. Example, according to Segil in 2007 in his book, if scientists observe that criminality rates are usually high in neighborhoods with high unemployment rates, then they can now make a theory that environmental conditions influence criminal behavior, or they can also make a theory that unemployment causes criminal activity. So, yun ang ibig sabihin yan. So, what is the concept in there? The concept of unemployment rate and the concept of high neighborhood crimes, or the concept of crime rate. So, when you combine that, then you will have what you call your theory. So, according to the American Psychological Association Dictionary of Psychology, to them, theory is a principle or a body of interrelated principles that purports to explain or predict a number of interrelated phenomena. So, yun ang ibig sabihin theory. No? Ito yung mga statement or principles trying now to explain the relationship of concepts or things or a phenomena. If we are talking of criminal activity or human behavior. In philosophy of science, theory is a set of logically related explanatory hypotheses. When you say hypothesis, these are assumptions. Assumptions ang ibig sabihin ng hypothesis that are consistent with a body of empirical facts and may suggest more empirical relationships. Say, for example, sinabi natin kanina na unemployment rate, tumataas ang tawag natin crime rate. So, practically, unemployment rate and crime rates, somehow, talagang merong namang interrelationship yan. So, pwede kang gumawa ng theory out of that. So according to Moore, on the other hand, theories are sets of concepts and principles. So take note, sets of concepts and principles. So the principle of police omnipresence. Okay, you combine that with we call it the principle of reducing criminal opportunity. O, di ba? Pag pinag-combine mo yan, magkakaroon ka ng theory. That your theory now is that high police visibility, okay, decreases criminal opportunity. So, yun ang magiging theory mo. You are now assuming that if there is high police visibility, mawawalan ng opportunity yung mga criminal to commit a crime. Okay, so it explains how some aspect of human behavior or performance is organized. And what are the components of theory? It could be composed of concepts. Okay, these are ideally well-defined things or principles. So pag pinag-combine mo yan, as long as you're trying to explain the causes and effect of something, the interrelationship or correlation of something, then you are now having what you call a theory. So the concept and principle. When you say concept, these are symbolic representation of an actual thing. Say, for example, you say police omnipresence. That is a concept. Omnipresence. Okay, that is a we call it a symbolic representation of high police visibility, like that. Okay, so it could be we call it say, for example, the concept of repeated learning or the concept of repetition, learning by repetition. Diba? Na pag inuulit-ulit mo yung ginagawa mo, then eventually matututunan mo yan. Construct, on the other hand, is a word for concepts with no physical referent. Say, for example, the concept of democracy, the concept of flexible learning, the concept of freedom. One type of construct that is used in many scientific theories is variable. So, in other words, kapag mayroon kang concept or construct, pag nagre-research ka, ang tawag nila yung mga variables. Ito yung mga independent variables or yung mga dependent variables or mga moderator. Okay? Say, for example, yung police visibility at saka yung crime reduction. So, yun ang pwedeng maging variable. So, pag-aaralan mo yung rate ng crime variable or crime rate, whether ito ay tumataas or bumababa depending sa dami ng pulis sa kalsada. So, principle now, on the other hand, will express now the relationship between two or more concepts. So, something like when you say police omnipresence, okay, police omnipresence a key to crime prevention or lower crime rate. So that's a principle. Among the importance of theory, which is not one of them. Yan, ano daw yung mga importansya or bakit mahalaga na mayroon kang theory, na mayroon kang assumption sa buhay. Yan, at alin dito ang hindi. It provides concepts to name what we observe and to explain relationship between two concepts. So kailangan ang theory kasi natin, lalo sa pag-aaral ng criminal behavior, kailangan meron kang konsepto. Konsepto, mga pwedeng physical thing or pwedeng mga abstract things. Tulad nga lang sabi natin, drug addiction, okay? Traffic accidents, motor vehicular accidents, okay? We call it the police brutality concepts like that, okay? So, maganda yung meron kang mga assumptions, okay, na nakikita mo na. Itong mga assumptions kasi, kung na ito, mga tawag natin, base na ito sa mga na-observe mo, pwede ka nang gumawa ng assumption, pwede ka nang gumawa ng theory ng ibig sabihin yan. So, kung ano yung na-observe mo bilang isang police, bilang isang criminologist, at na-observe mo na nangyayari, so pwede ka magkaroon ng assumption na yung na-observe mo sa komunidad mo ay maaring ganun din ang mangyayari sa ibang barangay o ibang lugar. Yung ibig sabihin nun, yung na-observe mo sa komunidad mo, na-observe mo sa iyong school na nangyayari, magkaroon kayo ng assumption na sa ganong eskwelahan, pag ganon ang gawin nila, so ganon din ang mangyayari, kagaya ng condition or kagaya ng situation sa iyong, tawag natin, sa iyong school. So it is needed to explain what is being done and demonstrate that it works. So a jury is important para magkaroon ka ng stepping board on explaining kung ano yung dapat or ano yung ginagawa at paano ito nangyayari. Just like sinasabi natin, yung jury concerning the theory of police omnipresence, okay, and reduction of criminality, or high police visibility reduces crime rate. So, titignan mo ngayon, yung theory mo na yan ay magagamit mo kung ano nga ba yung ginagawa sa high police visibility. At ito nga ba ay naging effective. Theory also is used to enhance the growth of the professional area. So lahat niyan, class, kay ikaw ay criminologist, kay ikaw ay lawyer, kay ikaw ay politician, kay ikaw ay nasa natural science, okay, ano man yung trabaho mo, ay pwede yan, no? Pwedeng magkaroon ka ng theories and assumptions para tinatawag natin, meron kang stepping board para ma-enhance yung professional growth ng iyong grupo. Okay, so to identify a body of knowledge with theories from both within and without the area of distance learning. Of course, letter D is not an importance of theory because theory, it cannot solve problems in different times. Okay, because your theory may not be applicable to a particular place. That is the idea. Kaya letter D, hindi yan kayang gawin na importante ang theory. Pero may mga pagkakataon na hindi mo na kailangan yung theory. Okay, so the importance of theory are enumerated by Moore in 1991. So we already discussed number 1, 2, and 3. So we have number 4, theories will enable us to understand what we don't know and therefore is the only guide to research. When we say the only guide to research, it is difficult to conduct a research without an assumption. Okay? So normally researchers will make they will create hypotheses or theories or assumptions, and that would be their guidelines in conducting a research para makita nila yung mga variables or yung mga concepts or principles na kailangan sa pagkakandak ng research. So a while back, we do not include that theories can answer every problem in every given place. No. There are instances that theories may no longer applicable, particularly if the phenomena is obviously caused by something. That is the idea. Okay, just like we call it the law of gravity na sinasabi ko kanina, ano? Or the law of gravity ni Isaac Newton na dati meron siyang theory na lahat ng ipupukol mo sa taas ay babagsak. But basically, hindi dapat ginagawa na ng theory yun kasi obvious naman that everything that goes up, okay, actually comes down. So, he came up with the law of gravity. What is usually an offshoot of theories? So, ano ang offshoot? Yan ang tignan natin. Pag sinabi mong offshoot, yan yung mga bunga, yan yung mga sanga, or yan yung mga branches na tinatawag natin. The offshoot of theories is not principle, it is not concept. Because we discussed a while back that principles and concept basically they are the components of theories. You cannot come up with the theory or hypothesis without setting principles or concept as to the explanation of an occurrence or phenomena. So we mentioned a while back that construct is also a kind of concept also. So obviously, the offshoot of theory would be the law. Okay, so offshoot, as I've mentioned a while back, it means a branch or anything that originated or developed from something else. Just like the issue on whether which comes first, criminology or criminal justice education. Well, if you're going to ask my opinion, nauna ang criminology. Criminology is an offshoot of social science. Every philosopher during those times 300, 500 years ago, they studied the society. They call them social scientists. And eventually, here comes Lombroso, here comes Cesar Vicaria, and Topinard and other people. They became interested in a social phenomena, which is a criminal activity. So from there, they created now a new field study, which is criminology. And some years ago, medyo yung mga high-ranking people ng criminology sa Pilipinas, they came up with the word criminal justice education, and then nilagay nila under nito yung criminology. Kaya tuloy, parang nangyayari ay naging sanga ng criminal justice education yung criminology, which supposedly not, no? That is my, we call it stand on that matter. So, how a law develops? So, paano nga nadidevelop ang law? Okay, so going back to the discussion. First, you have to set up your theory or hypothesis. You try now to make an assumed explanation of an occurrence of a phenomena. Just like, say, for example, you notice that most of the drug addicts, young people or drug addicts, you found out that many of them basically are product of broken families, or obviously there was or there is an absence of parents in their homes. Okay, so you will come up now with a theory that you are now assuming that lack of parental guidance causes drug addiction among the youth. So how to develop now a law? Now you are going to conduct a series of research from in your city, in your place, in your barangay, in other provinces, all over the country, and perhaps you try to collect that with the study of other people in other countries. Now, if it will turn out that's drug addiction among the children or among the minors, basically they have a common denominator or common characteristics, which is most of them, or we call it a great number of them, are products of broken families, then you can come up now with the law which says that the law on the role of parents in the reduction of drug addiction among the youth. If in your series of researches it turned out that parental guidance is the major causes of drug addiction. Okay. However, in natural science, a theory in natural science, just like physics, just like chemistry, okay, just like we call it biology, like that. No, the law that could be created in there could be, we call it absolute. No, absolute yung kanyang universality. Pare-parehas, identical yung kanyang outcome. Kapag nagkanta ka ng experiments, then you will come up with a natural law. But in social science, we cannot do that, no? Because there are other factors. Basta, pag napakataas yung probability, ang isang bagay ay nagkokos sa ganitong bagay, then you can come up with a particular social science law. Okay? So, yun ang pagde-develop nila ng social science law na tinatawag natin. Okay, number 9. The following are true about theories except. A theory is composed of concepts and principles. We already discussed that. That's correct. A theory is a set of logically related explanatory hypotheses. Meaning, yung assumption mo ay pwede mong ma-explain. Okay? So, that's correct. And a theory is a principle or a body of interrelated principles. So, as I mentioned a while back, you have the concept of parental guidance and the concept of drug addiction, or the principle of parental guidance, okay, and the concept of drug addiction. So you combine them, they are interrelated with one another, so you can come up with a theory. Dapat yung theory mo naman ay napakataas naman yung possibility na mangyayari. Huwag ka namang mag-theory ng tawag natin, napaka-off mark yung possible outcome niya. Say for example, mag-experiment ka sa natural law. Sample lang ito sabi mo na yung baboy na pinapainom mo ng muriatic acid ay tumatangkad. O yun, hindi pwedeng kwan yun. Hindi pwedeng maging theory kasi napaka-imposible naman. hindi siya interrelated yung principle or yung concept. That's the idea. So, ganun din sa social law or sa criminology, kapag mag-create ka ng jury, tawag natin, medyo, kumbaga, ay interrelated naman. So, nagkaroon ka ng jury na lahat ng mga maiitim na tao ay malakas ang tendency na mag-commit ng crime. So, parang yung probability naman, hindi siya naman masyadong interrelated. Okay? So, what is wrong about jury is that jury comes after law. It should be the other way around. Dapat, it should be before. Okay? Instead of after. So, bago ka magkaroon ng law, dapat jury muna. So, yung letter D ang mali. So, jury versus law. A law is an idea that grows out of jury. So, nag-grow siya, offshoot siya ng jury. But not all juries lead to predictable laws. In other words, meron kang jury after conducting series of researches, it turned out na kukunti lang yung probability ng interrelationship or correlation ng dalawang principle na yan or dalawang concept na yan, then practically hindi mo siya magamit to predict a social phenomena or to predict criminality. Okay, so it comes first, no? The jury and not the law. For example, the law of imitation by Jane Gabriel Tarde and a French criminologist. It was a jury before he theorized na lahat ng mga tao ay hindi inventive. Parang hindi sila nag-iimbento ng kanilang ginagawa pero most of them ay nanggagaya. So nag-conduct siya ng series ng researches niya and he came up na napakataas yung probability na mga tao ay gumagaya sa mga nakikita nila. So, with that, nag-create na siya ng kanyang The Law of Imitation. Okay, so number 10. A theory is any idea. On the other hand, concept in its strictest sense is an underlying explanation of how something works. Obviously, the answer here is both of the statements are wrong because theory is not simply an idea. Okay, but rather your theory basically is an assumption or a prediction of something. Okay, so it's not just an idea. So we call it both of the statements are wrong because a concept could be an idea, but not theory. On the other hand, theory, in its sense, is an underlying explanation of how something works. Okay? So, yun ang mga pagkakaiba niyan. So, maaaring sabihin nyo, Sir, kailan namin pag-uusapan yung criminological theories? Unang-una, kailangan muna nating maintindihan ano nga ba ang theory. Okay? Bakit meron tayong criminological theories? They are assumptions. Kaya, pag sinabi ng inyong nabasa concerning what you call the theory of atavism, hindi ibig sabihin na lahat ng pangit ay kriminal. Okay? Imagine nyo na lang, no? Ang dami ng kriminal sa inyo, no? Kidding aside, no? Pag yung tawag natin, yung theory na mababasa mo ay naniwala ka agad, ang sinasabi ng theory, mga assumption lang yon base sa observation na more or less ay interrelated yung isang criminal activity sa isang possible cause nito. Okay? Kaya yun ang pag-usapan natin later on, yung mga various or different assumptions on what causes criminal activity. Okay? So that is we call it the significance of your study on the concept of, we call it theories and law and concept and principle and construct. And on the first part of your discussion today is that about the concept of human behavior. So there were different perspectives kung ano yung mga or bakit ganito ang behavior ng tao at ano ang human behavior. And eventually, there are also theories as to bakit ganito ang nagiging individual or social behavior ng mga tao. Okay? So, yan lang for today. So, do not forget to subscribe our channel para kapag may mga bago tayong lecture ay at least kayo ay manonotify kaagad. So, pwede nyo ring i-press yung bell para ma-notify kayo kapag may mga bago kong ipopost na mga tawag natin lecture, hindi lamang sa theories of crime causation, but any, we call it lectures related to criminology. Okay, so good day, good night, okay, good afternoon, and good morning. Yan, so God bless you all.